McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop, Season 5, Episode 3. Melinda Maudie Merkle is dead. Sort of. October 23rd, 1921. Continued. It was very creepy, diary. I mean, honestly. I had to keep tapping myself in the arms to reassure myself I wasn't a ghost. I sat in the upper window of an office, staring down into the street, where the seeming dead body of Melinda Maudie Merkle lay on the front steps of McGillicuddy and Murder's pawn shop. It was hard not to feel like this was the end, and I was floating over my body at the end of life. The more I watched, however, the more I felt grounded. And, to tell you the truth, diary, I began to feel it was a little funny. People rushed around. The police were called. I knew it would be in all the papers. She had died of a mysterious cause. The case of the murderess was at last closed. There was a bit of humorous drama in it at the end of the day. I didn't really think of that thing down there as a corpse, even though everyone else thought it was. There is tragedy in a corpse, a true end of what was once living. I am very much alive, so I didn't feel as much of a sense of horror or pain at the sight of dead Maud in the street below. It almost felt like being 10 again, playing with friends and pretending to faint. I was Juliet, experiencing a pretend death. No daggers in my future, though, thank you. That sock puppet version of myself was disquieting, but not so much. I put my chin in my hands and watched. For once I felt no sense of urgency, no need to do anything. They were doing everything for me. I was accomplishing great things just by watching my plan unfold. Honestly, it was the most fascinating bit of theatre I had ever seen. I thought about the next 24 hours. They would take the corpse to the morgue, probably. Perhaps do an autopsy. I didn't know how quick they were about these things. Perhaps the fake corpse would vanish from the freezer before they were finished with it, and there would be more headlines. Merkle the murderess, dead body stolen from morgue. If that ever happened, then the mystery of me would never end. What a frightful sensation it would be for decades. But whether I would spend my time in the newspapers as a magic disappearing hat-trick corpse or not, no one would dispute that I was dead. The search for me would end. No one would be scanning the streets, desperate to bring me to justice. The case would be closed at last. My death was irrefutable now. I was watching at least 30 witnesses, and, despite popular fiction opinion, a death is impossible to fake like this. There was no denying the reality of that corpse. I had done it. I could walk the streets again. I was no longer a murderess, because the fake murdering Maud was dead. I now had one last thing to accomplish. This was my reason for collapsing in a corpsey swoon on the front steps of the pawn shop. I needed the attention of the public, but I also needed the attention of... Someone stepped out of the pawn shop, no doubt to see what all the commotion was about. Oh, diary, my stomach flipped. It was Noble. His features looked slightly different. He looked emptier, more tired, shallow, if that makes sense. A bit of a shell of Noble. Still, the newsboy cap, the way he held his shoulders, that handsome face. It was still him. This felt like looking at a dead body. Looking down at my fake corpse didn't hurt, but this felt real. This felt disturbing, like I was looking at a dead body. I had known him. I loved him dearly. He'd wanted to kiss me, and I'd been almost ready, right before he had been turned into a night enthusiast against his will. Noble grumbled something to one of the pedestrians. They pointed down. He cleared his way through the crowd to where fake Maud lay dead. Noble looked down at me. He stared. And then, oh diary, he staggered back. I'd never seen him look so stricken. I felt a sharp rip that went from the top of my heart to the bottom. I ached and spilled. To understand deep in your soul that someone cares about you like that. Noble cared about me that much, that even under the fog and thinness of being a night enthusiast, it still hurt that I was dead. He looked like he'd been stabbed straight through the heart. Night enthusiasts aren't supposed to care about anything. Their feelings are shallow. What a reaction, then, from someone who wasn't supposed to care. I missed the old Noble James so much, so suddenly. I missed the real him so much that I felt like I was bleeding. Noble turned without a word and went back into the pawn shop. What would he tell them? That Maud had died on the front steps in a last attempt to defy them? Diary, I am all for defying, but I am also all for living. I folded my hands together tight. I stared across the street and took a deep breath. Raster would stop hunting for me now. Why track the blood of someone you know is in the ground? As far as the entire world knew, well, apart from Mara and Dolores, Melinda Maudie Merkle was dead. I had done it. Gradually, the scene below dissipated. Fake Maud was taken away. I sat in my window for a little while longer, leaning back and thinking. I had focused so much on getting to this moment that I hardly knew what to do next. At last no one was tracking me. I could set about solving this terrible tragedy. The problem was how to solve. How do you return the souls of every magic unusual who is now a night enthusiast? The answer is you don't. But if I couldn't, then I might as well despair. There had to be a way, some way of solving this. I decided to at least move to the next thing I did know how to do. I teleported to a theatre. It was in the middle of the day, so the theatre was locked up and quiet, hushed and dusty, full of curtains and the whispers of old stories. I sat down at one of the vanities and borrowed someone's equipment. On went a new face. I wasn't very good at it. Matthew John had been much better. Still, I'd learned some tricks from him, and after an hour of careful working, I had a different nose, different eye makeup, and a distracting bit of lipstick. "Maud," I said, looking at myself. "You minx." After that, I went rummaging in the wig room. I chose something at the far back that clearly wasn't in use for the current show. Those were all downstairs with the makeup, so I wasn't stabbing the current production in the back. I fiddled and fitted until the wig was on nicely. I popped over into the costumes to get a jacket and new shoes, an outfit that would make me look older and glamorous, but also hide the dress that Maura had made me, because of course fake Maud had been wearing that dress too. With the coat buttoned, and October was getting very cold anyway, I looked utterly different. I left oodles of money in the costume room. Sorry, theatre. God bless you and your tiny Tims. Then I stopped by one final time in the makeup room to take a look at myself. Honestly, who was that? I looked like a movie star. Maybe not as attractive, but very fancy. I giggled. I teleported from there to a restaurant where I sat down and ordered a meal and paid for it and ate it. I haven't done that in months. It was pure magic, I am telling you. At the restaurant, I sat down and wrote a lot in my diary. And that is where I am right now, finishing up. Now I am staring at the last trail of inky words I just put down, and I am wondering what to do. I wish I could read you like a book, diary. Take a peek. Well, what did I do next? How did I solve it? What did I make happen? But I'm staring at you, and staring at soup, and I have no other ideas. I am free, with empty pages stretching out ahead of me, and I don't know where to go. October 25th, 1921. After my soup staring and contemplation, I got up from the restaurant. Isn't it nice to know that I really did do something, because here I am 2 days later, writing to you again. Diary, I definitely did something. Merkle the murderess has passed into the footnotes of history, I'm pleased to say. There weren't any headlines about my magical disappearing corpse, so I have passed quietly into invisibility. I can hardly believe it. I do feel clean, like I have a fresh slate, like I am starting over. Really, it feels triumphant in a deep core way, because I have finally undone what the night enthusiasts tried to do to me. They acted as if they had total control of my life, as if they really did have the power to force me to do what they wanted. I have erased their nasty little game. I have undone its effects on me. It feels remarkable. I hope Dolores is doing well with her grandmother's wish. I have done very well with her potion. Well, diary, back to the issues at hand. After I tucked you away in the restaurant, I ran my hand down your spine and started thinking about my china eye again. It is missing, you remember. It vanished one day from my pocket, and I have no idea why. I had hoped very much that Mar would have something to do with it, that maybe the china eye was with her in her secret tower, that it had disappeared because she had taken the original smashed teacup out of human reach. You remember that my china eye came from a smashed teacup. It was broken under a man named John, who died in Mara's kitchen. I still don't know why John was poisoned, but when I visited Mara back in 1916, by using my china eye as a murder object, the Night Enthusiasts were a brand new organization. No one knew yet how dangerous they were, or that they removed bits of their souls. John had angered them somehow, and they'd killed him. I wonder now, thinking about it, if John was the first casualty the Night Enthusiasts ever created. Was he their first murder? When I held my china eye in the palm of my hand, was I holding evidence of their first act of evil? Almost as if, from the beginning, I was meant to be pitted against them. Perhaps their organization truly began that night with the first death, and I used to have the power to step into that moment. It's a chilling thought. All that being said, Mara did not have my china eye. Its disappearance remains a stubborn fact. I wonder what could have changed its existence. It's almost as if... well, no. That's too strange a thought. Too impossible to even write down. Well, diary, the china eye had to wait. I mentally ran down my list of things to solve. China eye, no. Giving my friends the bits of their souls back, no. Too hard. I have no idea where to begin. Instead, I decided to start with the one thing I did have some idea about. The cadavers. Dolores had sparked strong curiosity in me. She had mentioned that the cadavers could be bits of someone's identity that had split off of them somehow, like the corpse she made for me. Let's think about that for a moment, shall we? Rath's doppelganger, his cadaver, was from before he was put into his train car. It has his human eyes and face. Diary, I am brimming with theories. I don't want to put anything down on paper just yet. But I have hope again. Hope for this strange phenomenon. Let's just say for now that I need to find Rath's cadaver. Just how I was going to find it, I had no idea. The thing could teleport. It could be anywhere. But I got up from the restaurant, and I stepped out into the night. I stood in the foggy, dark street, feeling like a different person. I felt the peace of anonymity, the quiet of having nothing urgent to do. Of course, it is all urgent in the end, but I stood still for a moment and felt the whisper of the damp night around me, and I just stood. I stood and thought. What has happened to me so far? What are some clues I could maybe follow into something more? Suddenly, I clapped my hands down on the top of my head. Ye gods! Ye gods! The signs, the funny little signs that said, "This way to find the bodies." Noble and I had found one in the Whiskelet world. We'd found a second one here in 1921, but I'd forgotten all about it, because not long after that, Noble had been shot and turned into a night enthusiast. I felt certain the signs were for me, especially because whenever I touched one, my hands came away with dry, magic, unusual blood. Glowing. Noble had touched the sign with no effects. The signs are for me, I can feel it. But what is sending them? And what do the signs mean? The first time we followed the sign, it led us to the Whiskelet conference room, and so we thought that was what it was all about. Those clockwork Whiskelets, their metal bodies, sitting in the dark. But the second time, it had led us through city streets. If we were meant to find something, we had never found it, because a night enthusiast had arrived and cut us off. Had I missed what we were supposed to find both times? Perhaps beyond another door, perhaps if I'd waited longer, I would have found something in the Whiskelet world. Perhaps Noble and I had been one turn away from finding a body here in 1921. Perhaps the signs were leading me, but I still had yet to see what they were leading me to. Bodies. Could they be connected to my ghosts? Or were the bodies my cadavers? I knew the cadavers could show up in the Whiskelit world. We had seen Wrath's cadaver there, in their cave. Perhaps I had been about to discover another. Perhaps the signs were referring to the cadavers. Well then, all I had to do was wait. Surely another cryptic sign was going to pop up and point me in the right direction. Someone somewhere was directing me. Whether for my good or evil, I didn't know, but I assumed I would run across another sign. Drops of rain began to fall out of the sky. I tilted my face up and blinked, pleased by the cool springing of the rain. The wind chattered past, and I suddenly felt hope. I was going to do this right. I was going to find a way to do this. It was like I was curling back a corner of the future, catching a glimpse of how I was going to feel, and my stomach caught. Good things were coming. What a strange sensation to have, when everything was so bleak. I didn't want to head too far away, so I slipped into the downtown library for sleep. It was dark and ruffling, quiet, with the fragrance of books. I took off the coat and crumpled it under my head, then lay down under a table, on a rug. For a long time I just stared into the dark, thinking. I felt like the books were thinking, and their thinking was keeping me awake. There was a large clock ticking on the other side of the library too, and the ticking was loud and distracting. This moment felt like a blank slate. As soon as I dropped any color onto it, I would change the look of it forever. How would I know what colors to choose when I didn't even know what I was painting? Suddenly, in the darkness, I began to see small drops of luminescence fall from the ceiling. At first I thought I was imagining it. It was like having fireflies trapped in my eyes, little glimmers of fantasy. I scooted out from under the table and blinked hard. No, it was real. It was really happening out there. It wasn't just a trick of my vision. It was like jellyfish glowing under the sea. It was like magic unusual blood. It had that same glow. It was falling in steady drips from a crack in the ceiling. I got to my feet, a squall in my stomach. Magic unusual blood doesn't glow until it's dry. This was falling like liquid, but it did glow. Oh, diary. I shivered. Something was leaking from the floor above this one. I had to go find out what it was. We hope you've enjoyed Season 5, Episode 3. Melinda Maudie Merkle is dead, sort of McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop is written and performed by Minerva Sweeney Wren, all rights reserved. Thank you for continuing all this way with Maud's adventures. New audio dramas are coming, and there is news on those, as well as fandom fun, if you follow me on Instagram and Twitter, at Meg Macaulay Inc. That's Inc, I-N-K. Please consider becoming a monthly supporter on Patreon, or if you can't commit right now, say thank you with a one-time donation. I now have Venmo, at Minerva Sweeney Wren. All links are in the description of this episode. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop will continue with Season 5, Episode 4, Blood in the Library.